Hey guys, Moneyman300. The drive and tune on the S-Class ACR, the Viper. Come on, turn. Get on it now. He's going to beat me to that inside. That wasn't a very good turn. About looks like my fourth lap after the warm-up. Didn't want to show you the other ones. I had some pretty good laps in there, but I just could not quite keep it clean in there. I always had one spot where I was just doing something stupid. Let's see what we do in this one, and this is one of the spots. A little better that time. Still a little wheel spin coming up. It's going to be close here to actually get past him. I can get him on this last turn because he brakes too early coming into this, or maybe that's just the way his car handles. You see we're pretty even. He's not pulling away from me at all in here. Oh, he just got me. It's going to be close. Oh, and then I topped that out trying to get over here. We'll give it one more lap. I had a couple turns that weren't all that good, so. Namely this one. That's a much better turn. He was ahead of me last time coming out of this turn. And he beats me in this one like every time. It's just a better. Not terrible. We're right on him this time. Alright, just make a good turn in this last one. We should be able to reel him in there. We're almost identical on speed. Might even be just a touch faster. Until I get to 5th gear. Don't lock it up. Keep it all the way. I think we'll get in there. Alright. So it did take 6 laps to reel him in. I had a couple others that I was right there, but like I said, I was dirty in there. So we'll finish that out and go take a look at our tune. See what position we're in. Not bad. I still had some more, that still wasn't a particularly good lap. A couple of those turns could have been much better. And looks like 171st place. So so came in 171st place there. Not terrible for just a few laps and a tune kind of out of the box here. I had a grip build on this before that I used for single player. I went and rebuilt it and put a speed tune on it. And let's go take a look at those parts and show you what we got here. I really think I could get that inside of top 100. Just there's some more seconds in there that I could get. So let's go take a look at the part. All right, so here we are in the garage. Let's take a look at the parts here. So let's just take a quick look at the numbers real quick. I'll just pop into here. There you can see the numbers. Speed 7.2, handling 6.2, acceleration 9.2, launch 8.8, and braking 7.0. We have 850 horsepower, 742 foot-pounds of torque. Came in at 3,114 pounds. Very even weight distribution, 50-50. And we have 8.4 liters of displacement. So there's our base numbers, and then there's some 0 to 60 stats, and top speed at 182. And our braking distances, and pretty good lateral G's, 130, 1.35, and 155, so should be a pretty good, as you saw, handled pretty well. But this is, again, this is a speed tune. This is going to be for, like the track I just drove on, the Sebring tracks. It's potentially good on, like, maybe Prog full, although I might want a little bit more handling in that for Prog full. The Spa should run good there. Road Atlanta, the long version of that. So tracks like that, they're going to have a longer straightaway. Indy GP. So yeah, so let's dive in here. First thing I want to go through is First thing I want to go through is our aspiration conversion. You want to come in here and do this first, because if you don't do it first, there's a bug in here where it may not even let you put it in there. I've had it happen a couple of times, and the only way I could fix it is to buy another version of the same car. I was never able to correct it, so I basically had cars I could not put the put my Centrifugal Supercharger on. This is a part I look to do on most cars. I think you get the most bang, in my opinion, you get the most bang for your buck as far as horsepower to PI. You know, altogether you're seeing 217 horse, but that's also because I've upgraded Supercharger in the engine parts section, which you'll see in a minute. I may take a look at reworking this with the twin turbo option. I haven't decided yet. See if I could get any more horsepower out of it for the same amount of PI. But yeah, I always like to do the centrifugal supercharger. I just think you get a lot with it. So, all right, let's dive over into the engine parts here. We'll go through these real quick. Most of them are stock. I have a couple upgraded, but we have stock air filter, stock fuel system, stock ignition, and then we're going to have the race exhaust. You can see in this car there's really only one option for each one of these. There aren't a ton of upgrades available. Stock cams and valves, stock valves, displacement. We do have the race engine block, and then we have stock pistons and compression. And as I mentioned earlier, we have the race centrifugal supercharger. Again, it's a great part to put on to add a bunch of horsepower. 113 horsepower for that. Was 35 PI, but still very good investment. And then should be stock on the rest of these. I generally don't use these because they add weight along with the horsepower. Stock oil and cooling, I normally don't use that either. And the only reason I would put the flywheel on is if I need, if I'm trying to add a PI. I'm sitting at $7.99. So that's it for the engine parts. So let's move over to platform and handling. Just to save some time, I have race everything here. Race brakes so that I get those adjustable brakes. It comes, you notice one thing you don't see in here is the springs. It comes stock with race springs, so you have adjustable springs and dampers and things. So that's kind of nice. You don't have to spend any PI to do that. But certainly have the race roll bars front and back. I do have the full race chassis reinforcement and race weight reduction. So I have all of those at race. Come over into the drivetrain area, and I'm going to have a stock clutch. That's pretty typical. Sometimes I may bump it up, but it's pretty rare. I feel like things shift pretty quickly already when you're doing, as long as you're using the clutch to shift with, and I don't see a huge benefit based on the PI that you have to spend to upgrade that clutch. So I generally am doing stock clutch. I'll use any variation of transmissions though. In this case I use the sport. Sport's usually what I'll start with, and then I'll adjust off of there. If I feel like I didn't get much out of that sport transmission, I'll come down here and pick up an extra 10 PI that I could use elsewhere. And then likewise, if I don't like the gearing that I'm getting and I need to adjust individual gear ratios, or sometimes it'll take you from a 5-speed to a 6-speed by going to the race, then I'll up it into that race transmission. But I ended up on sport on this one. The Driveline, this is another one of those that if I need, and I must have ended on $7.99, so I added this, get a little bit of weight reduction, takes me to that 800. And then I always do race differential. You don't pay a penalty for this in PI ever. I'm not sure why you would not want the race differential. It's an important adjustment that you can make to help you be able to control your car. Okay, so that's it for the drivetrain parts. Let's move over into wheels and tires here. So tire compound, I have the sport tire compound. Usually either here or here if I'm trying to build more of a speed car. So could go here and maybe get more speed out of it, but I don't know if I can still control it. It's still pretty drivable here and has a lot of horsepower, so I felt like this is a good balance. And then you can only upgrade the width in the rear on this car, so I have the upgraded width. That, as it relates to when we talk about width and the compound, I always start with width first, and I want to get the widest tire I can get to the wheels that have the power going to them. So in this case, being a rear-wheel drive car, I would always go upgrade my width as much as possible before I do the tire compound. That's just the way I've always done it. I feel like you can really get a lot for not a lot of PI out of this, and you can see the difference here. And some cars may be 5 or 6 PI because they'll have some other compounds that you can, or not compounds, but tire widths that you can play with. But you really get pretty good grip by making your rear tires on a rear-wheel drive as wide as possible. And then if you have some PI left to play with and you've got the car at a speed you want, then you could come in here and start upgrading your compound to even get more grip. But I highly recommend that you start by getting your tires wider first and do it on the, if it's front wheel drive on your front tires, rear wheel drive on your rear tires. And even if I could adjust the fronts, I would make them wider. Maybe I wouldn't go full width if I had multiple options in there, but I would still make them both wider and then start adjusting the compound. So that's just a tip there that I always like to use. The wheels in here, we'll come in here and take a look at these. We have the Graham Lights 57C. Pick whatever in here you want that will keep you at that 800 mark. Just happens to be where I landed. And it's possible you could get a couple more pounds if you went through every wheel and found another one that's 800. Might even be a little bit lighter, but I don't want to spend the time going through all that. And then I'll have 19-inch, which is as much as you can get on the front, and I believe 20-inch on the back, which is also as much. Again, not a ton of upgrade options on this car, but I went with the wheels in both of those, so that'll do it in the wheels and tires. We'll move over to the aero. Again, not a ton of options, but we're going to have the adjustable Forza race on the front. And we are also going to have, this is actually a stock option on this car, is the adjustable stock rear wing. Could take this off of here, and I didn't play around with that. I actually gained a couple of PI on this. Certainly going to lose the ability to add downforce, which I do have downforce in the tune on this one, but I generally elect to go with the full aero in the front and back. That way I can control how much downforce I want to have on this. So that is the aero, and we covered the conversion with the aspiration conversion already. So that'll do it for all of the parts. So let's hop over into the tune here and see what we got going on. All right, tires. Got 29 in the front, 28.5 in the rear. That is pretty standard for any of my setups. Usually I do a half a pound lighter to where the power is going to. In an all-wheel drive situation, I might be even. Front-wheel drive, a little less in the front than the rear. Gearing ended up at a 3.5. I think that I probably could, as a matter of fact, I know I could do some work in here. So if you're building this tune and you want to play around with it and tune it a little bit more for the track that you're driving, I think I could put a little bit more into this. I was getting into fifth gear, but I really wasn't even getting close to topping that out. So there's probably still a little bit of work to do in the gears, although I did like where I was at coming in and out of turns, and that may be more important than wrapping out fifth gear. So 3.50 is where I ended up with on this one. Into the alignment section, front negative 2.0 in the front and 1.5 in the rear. That is, I've been playing around with and I've seen some tips on taking this higher. The game seems to allow you to be able to run more negative camber, and what that's going to do is add to your grip in the corner. It's going to give you that on rails, cornering on rails type of feeling. Typically when you do that, there is, there's a penalty that coming out of, that you usually have to pay coming out of the penalty. So if you get too much here, you could get very unstable coming out of a corner, just by the ways of that camber that you're adding and having your tires lean inward gives you a lot of cornering ability, but then coming out of that corner can make it unstable. But it seems like you can go pretty high and really get a high degree of turn in and turnability. I don't know if that's a word. Ability to turn very well and corner like you're on rails through a turn. Along with that, generally you're going to bump this caster angle up. To be honest with you, I'm not sure why I have that at 5. I would typically go 5.5 or even 6.0 here, but like I said, car seems to handle pretty well, so I don't know that I would mess with it, but this is an area you could adjust. I did end up with more toe than normal. I usually start these at 0 and don't change them, but to get some more turn-in ability, I needed the front, and same thing, this helps decreases or helps with some of the stability in the rear there. So that's where I ended up with, and I think that felt pretty good. So let's go over to the anti-roll bars. It's going to be pretty soft, and what you see in the springs in this car, this is running a very soft setup on this, and just to get the grip I wanted out of it, I needed to go very soft. So, and the other thing is typically when I'm running a rear-wheel drive car, especially something with high horsepower, I'm going to be softer in the rear than the front, and it's kind of the opposite on this one, and that just really helped with my ability to turn. I needed them same or even the rear a little bit more stiff, but ended at 1801 and 1881 for my anti-roll bars. and you can see how soft the springs are here with 407.9 in the front and 503, and actually running almost 100 pounds more in the rear. What that's doing is helping me keep the front end on the ground so it doesn't push out of the turns, and it allows me to actually apply a little bit of throttle to the car coming out of a turn. It keeps the front end planted and it keeps traction. These numbers normally might be reduced, but actually I wasn't having any problem with spinning it in the rear, but I was pushing, so it lowered that front. And like I said, I already started really soft, and because I started so soft, and I was running it on Sebring, which is a track that is known to be relatively bumpy, especially in that last sweeping turn. It's very bumpy, and your car can kind of skid and bounce across there, and the first turn as well. So I jammed it all the way up. I was having problems kind of losing the car, not only there, but also on your, not rumble strips, but on your turning strips. You hit a lot of those in that track, so this really helped increase the stability, and I didn't feel like I paid much of a penalty. It's a pretty low car anyway, but yeah, I jammed that all the way up. That's not a typical setting. Normally you're going to see me run those all the way low, but this particular car, I needed to run it this way because of how soft and because of the track we were driving on. The dampening, this has become pretty standard for what I've been doing. Very stiff rebound, very soft bump. This is not how you would typically see it done in real life, or maybe even previous Forza games, but for whatever reason this game allows you to run some extremes on these settings, kind of like with the camber settings, in that I can have my rebound super stiff and my bump super soft without paying much of a penalty in there. Typically you're going to see your bump stiffness at about 60% of your rebound. So if I'm running 10 here, I would be more like 6, 5, 6, 7 in the bump stiffness. What this does is basically allows the springs to compress very easily and then bounce back quickly. So you get that really quick motion in there, and theoretically that should help keep the tires planted, and it actually works pretty well. So this one's even more extreme. I'll usually run anywhere from 8 to about 10, and anywhere from 1 to 3 here. So, but I ended up very, again, balanced between the front and the back. And also we've got aero. So I left the aero at the default. This is one area where you could play around with a little bit. Maybe if you want to be a little faster, you could take the aero out. If you're having problems with the handling, you could add some more aero in. Although I would suggest if you add any aero in this one, you might consider coming in, and because this is so soft already, you might want to add 50 or 100 pounds, depending on how much more aero you put in there, to each the front and the rear springs there. So I would keep the ratios the same. Keep your percentage of ratio between the front and the back, about 4/5 like that, or about the front running about 80% of the rear, but just add to each one if you're going to bump up the aero on here. Brakes, I felt this I felt like I really had dialed in on here. In there, I did not have hardly any braking problems with it locking up early or any of those things, or getting squirrely when you hit the brakes and the back end trying to get in front of me. So I really like where I was at with this, and actually this is a pretty default setting. I usually start at 53 and 110. In this case, I just bumped it up to 120, and that felt just about perfect. And then differential, running that pretty low because of the high horsepower, and I want to be able to get on it coming out of those turns without getting tons of wheel spin. One thing to note is that I was using traction control in the video. If you didn't notice that, and what you'll see is a lot of people, once you get up into S-Class and these higher classes, are running traction control as the cars get a little bit harder to drive. I could probably run this without traction control and be okay, but it allowed me to be a lot more stable and be able to run more consistent from lap to lap. Your choice on that. The car will drive okay without traction control. You just have to be a little bit better with your throttle control on it. And you might even want to lower this acceleration down to 10 or 15 if you're not running traction control. And that'll even help with that coming out of those turns and keeping things straight. And then in that deceleration, running 8, I might be able to bump it up running these Sebring tracks to 15 or 20 here, but 8 seems about right. I didn't want to lose a whole lot when I came off the gas. But now that I think about it, in those sweeping turns, this might be better if I bump this up a little bit. So that's an area where you might play around with also. So yeah, that wraps up all the parts here. Also, friend of mine, Rock King 3, he also has just put up a video on the same car, S-Class Viper, but his is more of a grip tune, so I think it's a great contrast to the video I've done here. I will link that video in the description along with his channel. Go check out his channel. He's got a lot of great tuning videos and other videos over there. But he's got the same one. It's going to be more of a grip tune though. It's going to have a grippier feel to it and a little less horsepower, but a little more grip. Going to be better for some of those shorter tracks. And using both of those tunes together, this one on some speed tracks, that one on your turning tracks, or he had it tuned more for the Alps. I think they're both really good tunes, but yeah, definitely go check out his channel, and I'll link those below. Other than that, I think that'll wrap this one up, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Later.